state-owned enterprises, infrastructure spend, and electricity price increases is a big concern. And as you were saying before the break, Minister, let's share the pain over a period of time. The gain is on the way in the future, but some people just can't afford it.
Absolutely, Peter, absolutely. The poor need to continue to be shielded from this. That is why in the present application, Eskom has requested that the inclining block tariff, you know, what used to happen until now is that a poor household is charged a certain level for their total consumption. Now, in multiple dwellings, what then happens, because if you go to the townships and many informal settlements, you find that there is this one household, but there are backyard dwellings for children and other people, relatives. Now, this pushes up the volume of electricity that you consume. And then you get charged on the basis of that high volume, as if you actually can afford. Now, what Eskom is requesting is that poor households be charged a flat rate, single-digit flat rate for poor households. That obviously would have to be determined together with the municipalities, so that the poor households are protected from this 16% increase. But secondly, we are asking municipalities to be considerate on their markups. Many municipalities charge more for electricity in addition to the tariff as a result of the fact that many municipalities use electricity tariffs as a source of revenue because they don't have revenue in any other way. And so that is why when we announced early this year that Eskom was no longer going to request the 25% from NERSA, from the electricity regulator, for the final year of the MYPD2, but they were going to request a 16% increase, which would have been a significant drop from 25%. We said that we request every other customer of Eskom to distribute this benefit to their own clients. And even in this instance, we are calling on municipalities as well to be considerate and that we need to all act to protect poor people.
All right, talking about poor people and being considerate, people would have seen images on the news of houses being destroyed in Lenasia, and we continue to see images of people living in squalor, in informal settlements. How do you talk to that person and say, look, we're going to spend billions and billions on infrastructure, but not on housing? Because for him, he's probably thinking, maybe your projects can wait. I need a house and shelter now.
No, the houses will continue to be built. This government has built millions of houses which have taken millions of people out of destitution. We will continue to do that. In all of these 18 strategic infrastructure projects, included among them is social infrastructure, the building of houses, of clinics, of schools. And in SIP2, for example, there are houses that are there is a housing project in Durban. If you look at the fact that we are going to develop a new urban center in Waterberg, around the Waterberg area, the new post-apartheid city, in actual fact, there obviously is going to be an investment into housing construction. So the Department of Human Settlements is an important partner and a member of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, because we need to move our people from destitution. The Department of Land Affairs is an important partner. Municipalities are members of the PICC. so that we look not only at economic infrastructure but also at social infrastructure.
All right, okay. Let's go straight to the tables. And if I could ask you just to stand up, say your name quickly, and ask your question as quickly as possible so that we can get through all these questions. I'd really appreciate your cooperation. Let's go straight to table number 25. And I think it's Ipeleng Mkari. Is that correct? If I've misread your name, please, if you could just say it again.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you for the engagement. I just wanted to find out, as an entrepreneur, how will the state address an equitable balance between local black players and obviously the international private sector in these very large 18 projects? That would be of interest to me. And secondly, the timelines and the risk profile of these massive projects. As local black businesses, we are obviously very keen to be involved. It would be interesting just to understand how the stakeholders will also communicate and engage us around the risk profile and particularly the time issues. Thank you.
Okay.
The reason we held the presidential, thank you very much, Ipileng. Thank you very much for the question. The reason the president convened the Presidential Infrastructure Conference on the 19th of October was to ensure that we disseminate this information as much as possible. We are able to galvanize stakeholders, labor, business, community constituencies to understand and support the infrastructure rollout. We are in the process of producing a booklet containing all the infrastructure projects in all these 18 SIPs so that investors know what is in the pipeline, what is where they should begin to position themselves for investments. We are in the process of developing funding models, because these infrastructure projects will not only be supported by the funding from the balance sheets of state-owned companies or even from the fiscus, but some of them will have to be funded through public partnerships, public-private partnerships. We're looking at even off-takes in some instances, so that the different private sector companies can know where they should prepare themselves for investment to avail their funding. We expect that we should be able, through this program, to unlock the balance sheets of state-owned companies as well as private sector companies to support this program. If you look at the timeline, these are roughly 20-year projects, and some of them will begin to yield very significant results in the next 8 years. If you look at the economic landscape in our country, by 2020, it will be significantly different when you consider that by then, we will have added over 11,000 megawatts of electricity. We will have procured 1064 locomotives. We will have procured the PRASA locomotives. So the economic landscape in our country will be vastly different, and a lot of jobs will have been created in the process.
All right, so let's go straight to table number 24. Is that Zora Numalo?
Morning, everyone. Mr. Minister, my question basically is that we've seen, like in the past 2 weeks, Greenpeace in Eskom actually protesting coal and stuff. So wanted to actually just find out from you your stance in looking at driving investment and bettering the economy and the infrastructural development happening in Limpopo, and knowing that it has employed so many people, so many poor people are employed, especially in our coal mines. What do we, in us being sensitive about this situation as well, Eskom is doing so much in terms of greening and energy efficiency and all these other things that they're doing. What do we have to, actually, how do we address this situation?
All right, so Zora's with Eskom herself, and so they're contributing. Coal is a dirty word, apparently. What are your thoughts?
Brian. No, don't worry, I'll answer. No, coal is going to continue to play a significant role in energy generation in South Africa. South Africa is a major producer and exporter of coal. It plays a significant role in providing electricity base load. It's going to continue to do that. But of course, in terms of the present plans, because sustainability is the future, we are going to decrease the volumes of coal we use for generation and begin to mix our generation capacity so that we use renewables, we use nuclear, we use other forms, including gas, to generate our electricity. That's why government also decided about 2 months ago to explore shale gas in order to explore whether we have sufficient gas in the country that we can mine safely so that we can also use it to generate electricity. So where we are as government, we've got to take pragmatic and rational decisions. We appreciate the pressure that various pressure groups and lobby groups put on us to continue to improve. That means that in the process, we must continue to invest in research and development to ensure that we are able to produce electricity using coal in a manner that is safe for the environment. And I think that some of our power stations, such as Gusile, are beginning to do exactly that, where we are implementing green technologies that use coal to generate electricity.
All right, table number 10, Jerry Malika. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Peter. The minister, in his address, actually touched on small business development. And the question is, in the parastatals, what is the minister going to do in trying to eliminate, in fact, the developing the small business as such, and what is the minister going to do in trying to eliminate fronting, which is very much prevalent? And again, furthermore, the small business in parastatals, we have small contracts. All of a sudden, this small business gets a huge project. Is the minister and the parastatals going to look at trying to uplift the small business in terms of capital, because there's so much red tape in banks, and as long as that particular small business has the capacity, proving itself that it can actually execute a particular project, capital is indeed a very big problem.
Okay, Mr. Malika, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that question. We recently held a transformation summit, and we are planning a competitive supplier development summit. We had initially hoped to hold it this year, but I've instructed that it be moved to early next year, where we will make available our competitive supplier development programs, particularly for infrastructure-related state-owned companies, to the private sector, so that they can begin to position themselves and know what's on the cards. Among that is included plans for supporting small business development, and that's why in the CSDP summit, the Competitive Supplier Development Summit, we are partnering with the IDC, we are partnering with DBSA and other players that provide seed capital for small business to be able to participate in all of these industrial activities. We are strictly implementing the localization accord. That is why in the recent procurement of 95 locomotives by Transnet, the local content is 60%. In terms of the PRASA procurement, it's 65%. PRASA has even set aside about 30% for black players in the field. So there are programs that we are implementing to focus on small businesses. I think that we have a collective duty with the funding institutions to continue to look at how to support and how do we use the infrastructure rollout and these fleet procurements to support the development of emerging local black suppliers. Because the president has raised a challenge for us, which he raised at the Black Business Council, that we need to develop black industrialists who are hands-on. They don't play golf during the day and leave their white counterparts running the business, but they are hands-on, they are running the entities themselves, they're developing the skills, building the capacity, the institutions, and the legacy, which they are going to bequeath for their offsprings. And that is what we need. When we look 20 years from now at this infrastructure rollout program, we must say, not only did we develop the infrastructure that changed the economic and social landscape of the country, we must say that there was a significant legacy that we left in our economy, which changed, one, the structure of the economy, but two, the ownership patterns of the economy.
All right, talking about ownership patterns, there was a young man who wrote you an open letter in the newspaper a short while ago. He was talking about the advertising industry, but I think the principles are the same, and I think you know the story I'm talking about. How do we go around these international organizations who get the local empowerment story correct, but in the end, you still have these conglomerates that are running things, as it were?
Two things there. One is, I am going to be meeting the black advertising industry in a week or two or so. I know that in the near future, I am having a meeting with the black advertising industry to look at their needs, to discuss with them how do we position them within the state-owned companies. But I had met with the black auditing firms, Transnet and other state-owned companies, Dinel, Eskom itself, South African Airways, South African Express, have supported the black auditing firms very boldly because of the bold steps and leadership that the shareholder is demonstrating. I had met with the black legal firms as well, BLA and Nadel, to look at the needs of black legal professionals. So there are steps we are taking in that regard to address those concerns. But as I had said before, this is our money. We can afford to be arrogant about how we want it to be spent. What we need is boldness on the part of the state and coordinated efforts to say, this is how we plan to support black economic players in South Africa, be it in supplier sectors or even in the professional consulting sectors. Because when we spend this money, there must be a clear view that we want to transform the ownership patterns in the country. I think that the state-owned companies in my portfolio, I can talk better about them because I know about what they are doing. They are making their significant contribution in this effort, but what we need is a much more coordinated effort. That's why in my introductory remarks earlier, I said the state must use all the levers it has control over, including its agencies, its state-owned companies, and their procurement in order to change the ownership patterns of the country.
All right. I was going to go to you, Pamela, but I think your question has been answered. She was going to ask, how will we ascertain local content, a majority of most of the infrastructure projects? And I think that that's pretty much covered that question as well. So let's go to table number 19. Chris, is it Litole? Or Sitole? Litole? Sitole?
Litole. My name is Chris Litole, and thank you, Peter. Good morning, Minister, and everyone else. As a loyal citizen of South Africa, I feel very proud when I see what SA is capable of, flying us all over the world, competing with other big companies. But as a small business and an entrepreneur, I am more worried and concerned when I see companies like One Time going down the drain, also claiming that unfair competition is actually contributing to that fact. You also alluded when you were talking earlier on to a number of graduates being trained so that they can be put back into the workplace. And I'm certain that we don't think they are going to be employed only by parastatals and government. We don't want to do that. We want to promote private companies. I want to know what is your view with regard to companies that are going down, basically because they are having financial problems. Is it possible for government to actually come up with a mechanism that will ensure that they assist these companies? I am proud of my country, but I also want to see the private sector, which is actually providing employment for a number of people outside here, succeed also. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Put Chris. You know, part of doing business involves taking risks, and some of those risks backfire. I have the greatest concern for the employees of One Time who are facing the prospect of job losses that is going to affect their families. I wish this had not been the case. I don't think that the reason One Time has gone under is because of unfair competition. I think that it's because of investment decisions that the company itself undertook. It's brought all of us the pain that we are experiencing, because the more the competition, the better for the customers of all of these airlines. We think, I mean, government in the past, I think around 2009, 2010, had intervened to assist the clothing industry when it was facing difficulties as a result of the global economic slowdown. That's when it was just beginning. But I don't think that government has the capacity to intervene and assist all companies that are facing difficulties. I am not saying that this will not be done. I am simply saying that it's something that might need to be looked at, and all the implications of such intervention be considered, and whether as the state we have the capacity to do exactly that.
All right. I'm going to change things a little bit because I find that we do run out of time, and so these are some of the questions that I thought would be here already but haven't come through, and I know that they're interested in. You've been a member of the ANC NEC for 15 years,
I
plus
could see
minus.
it in your face.
Okay. So let's chat a little bit about the NEC. I mean, what kind of issues are dealt with by the NEC between congresses? Because Mangaung is around the corner, Polokwane's history. And so this is an important time when people are watching you, and what the NEC decides often filters through to government policy. So it's quite important. What do you guys deal with in between congresses?
The National Executive Committee is the highest decision-making body of the ANC in between conferences and the general councils. It deals with all issues except formulating new policy, amending the constitution, or electing leadership. It can co-opt leadership based on the provisions provided in the constitution. But in between, we deal with virtually everything. Organizational challenges, we deal with the implementation of the conference policies and decisions. We exercise oversight and monitoring over government, and ensure that both the ANC, the movement, as well as the government are functioning as well as I expected, given, insofar as government is concerned, the popular mandate which we receive from our people.
How would you say it's evolved or changed from the Mandela, Mbeki, through to the Zuma era?
Naturally, with time, as time evolves, so does the ANC itself evolve. In instances, it gets better. In instances, wrongful elements tend to creep in, and we always have to be on the guard to watch out for those. The ANC of Madiba had to focus in large measure on issues of reconciliation and nation building, bringing South Africa together. The ANC under President Mbeki had to establish the institutions and systems of government which had not existed at the time, which are consonant with the democratic dispensation which had not existed at the time that we ascended to power. President Mbeki had an unenviable task. He had no models in front of him. He knew himself that he had a difficult task ahead of him. I don't think he for one moment undermined the responsibility he had. And the ANC had to provide support during that time to an ANC that was evolving and government that was being established. The ANC under President Zuma focuses a great deal on the challenges of job creation, the challenges of ensuring that the state that has evolved over the last 18 years is actually able to fulfill its obligations to our people, including ensuring that at local level we are able to respond to the needs of our people. But this ANC at all times faces the need to renew itself, even as it carries forward the elements inherited from the past. And we will continue to do so. All of them, these leaders of our movement, try to ensure that they leave the ANC better than when they found it, because no leader of the ANC ever leads it for their own generation. We all do so for future generations.
Is it getting better though? I mean, this is anecdotal, it's not scientific, but I've been listening to talk radio stations since about 1991, following social media. And it used to be, you switch on the radio, black guys were all, yeah, ANC, and the white people were saying, no, down with the ANC. I am hearing more and more black people talk down the ANC than ever before. What is this a sign of?
No, I don't think they're talking it down. I think people are beginning to assimilate the culture of democracy. They've got free speech. They are critical of the ANC, as they should be, because 18 years into government, the sins of incumbency begin to creep in. You might begin to become complacent. You need your own constituency to be vocal in their criticism of the weaknesses that you have, the mistakes you are making. Because if your constituency are sycophantic, if they are blind loyalists, then the possibility for you to always renew yourself in face of new challenges will diminish. And we have that responsibility to listen to the outcry, to the criticism. At times, it's harsh. And yet, as a leader, you've accepted that this is the responsibility I will undertake. You bear it in your stride, and you move on and implement the criticism which you receive. But the challenges that our movement faces are enormous. We are leading the most complex economy on the African continent, the largest economy on the African continent. We've got to be sensitive. It's the largest economy in an environment of high poverty, high unemployment, high inequalities. The situation has improved since 1994 significantly, as the census 2012 indicates, that contrary to the opinion that South Africa is getting worse, in actual fact it's not. Contrary to the opinion that South Africa has no leadership, to the contrary, the census 2012 says South Africa has got solid leadership. We need to continue to improve. This is no moment to sit back on our laurels and say that we've achieved. We have not.
Okay, talking about complacency, are you genuinely listening to the people? Because I sometimes get the feeling that you will get your way, Namakanjan. E-tolling, people don't want it, Minister, and yet you guys are adamant this is going to happen.
The middle class don't want e-tolling.
So you're saying that
the poor have been shielded from e-tolling, but let's not talk about e-tolling. The broader strategic question,
but it does speak to listening to your constituents.
Yes,
because if you had a referendum, I would dare say that they would say we don't want it.
You know, sometimes leadership is exactly about that. There are moments in our country where if you subjected the death penalty to a public referendum, you'll get an answer that would cause you to have to amend your constitution. And at times leadership has to exercise that responsibility to have foresight. You need a human rights-based constitution protected. You need a mechanism to fund your road infrastructure for the benefit of the people. You've got to take certain decisions. If everything you did, you subjected it to a referendum, you will not always get the answers that will make government to move forward. Only populism does that and says, oh no, we'll do whatever everybody says. But people expect firm, decisive leaders. They expect that the leadership will listen and the leadership will explain to them. At times the people might not agree, but the leadership must have the patience to explain why we need to do this. I think that the ANC listens. I think that the ANC takes into consideration the views of the people, even as we move forward. It became clear to us that the people were saying, you know, rural people can't continue to just be encapsulated within a program of agriculture. That you needed to have a specific department in government focusing on rural people. It became clear to us that our people were saying the land reform as we have implemented it doesn't work. Therefore, change the willing buyer, willing seller approach, appoint a valuer general, go on a different direction in terms of land reform. It became clear to us that our people were saying job creation can't merely be a function of a trickle-down approach. If you develop the economy, then jobs will be created. The perspective which had been articulated in the Freedom Charter and the RDP, that you need growth and development, that was the approach. And that's why now we are saying we are focusing on job creation as a specific program because we have particular challenges. So I think that we are listening. Sometimes you can criticize us for not listening well enough. Okay. I don't think that you can rule that out. Sometimes you can say that, no, you listened, but you didn't hear what we were saying. Yes, that is also possible. But we are listening to our people who were founded on that.
Okay, Mangahung is just around the corner and everyone's talking about it. How would you say, or how would you compare the race towards Polokwane compared to the race towards Mangahung? What lessons perhaps may have been learned or not learned at Polokwane?
One of the lessons that we, when we went to Polokwane, one of the great difficulties we were facing was not the fact that there was going to be a contest for leadership positions, even at the highest level, and neither is it a problem even now. The problem was how the contestation was being interpreted by our mass base, whether we were firm enough to say to those who support the leadership, the various leadership slates, to say, one, slates are wrong, two, that you need to bear in mind the integrity and prestige of the ANC, that thirdly, don't be too inwardly looking, because in that moment when the ANC is too inwardly focused, it turns of necessity to neglect the needs of the ordinary masses of our people. who don't live for ANC leadership positions. Now, you can't have an approach that says that is okay, every 5 years we'll have to go through it, because the problem is that people plan for 5 years earlier. So you go to Polokwane, as soon as you come out of Polokwane, you start preparing for 2012 in Mangaung, and there are people who are already positioning themselves. We need to deal with those problems and ensure that as the ANC moves to Mangaung, we accept that we are in a new moment. That whereas in the past, leadership would have been about the sacrifices you needed to make, the possibility that you might meet your ultimate fate brutally. Nowadays, it means a whole range of access to opportunities that make your life become even better. And that is the challenge that we need to focus on. The period between the preparations for Mangaung and the preparation, for Polokwane and the preparations for Mangaung need to become codified so that we use it to educate our members. On the one hand, to reaffirm the best values of the ANC, which have sustained the ANC for 100 years, but on the other hand, to say we live in a new period. How do we develop the culture, the traditions, the value systems that make us content with the new period, where there are people with unlimited amounts of resources who can bribe their way into leadership positions?
You're talking about leadership positions. I'm thinking of the way to ask this question. All right.
Just ask it.
Okay. So, one of the first questions that I asked the President when we began this series of briefings was, is the ANC divided? And he says, no, we're not divided. We encourage robust conversation. But over time now, we've seen a lot of signs that suggest that it is not a unified organization. We've seen people doing these changing of the guards type of gestures. We've even seen violence at some of the rallies. We've seen booing. And I'm just wondering, in this kind of environment, are there genuine questions to be asked about the leadership that's there? Because we've never seen this before.
Actually, people do this even at soccer matches. It doesn't mean that the soccer teams are divided at all. They sometimes express that opinion. I was at a game at Loftus Versfeld on Tuesday where people were doing this, directing it at the coach himself. But it didn't mean the team itself is divided. It just meant that they were expressing an opinion. It's okay. They must continue to. Now, but as I say, we need to teach the members of the ANC always and at all times to bear in mind the prestige of the ANC in society. The ANC was not preordained or even decreed from high places to become the genuine leader of the people of South Africa. It earned this leadership through the conduct of its leaders and members and through its own conduct as a movement among our people. It won our people's faith in it and conviction in the vision that it proposed. And so that is what we need to continuously teach our movement. I think the President was very forthright on Friday when he said, just after Mangaung, we need to begin a process of being extremely strict with discipline within the movement. I would add to what the President said to that by saying that we need also to begin now, so that when we go to Mangaung, we don't find ourselves with a skeleton of a movement, glorious in history,
is
but
indiscipline not a
diminished
sign
in
of
future.
discontent? Is indiscipline not a sign of discontent?
Ill-discipline is not a sign of discontent, it's a sign of ill-discipline. You deal with it. In 1969, there was discontent about the leadership of President Tambo and his collective, but there was no ill-discipline. In 1952, the ANC changed guard to President Albert Luthuli. In 1949, the ANC leadership changed guard. There was discontent, there was no ill discipline. And so you cannot never equate the two. Ill discipline belongs in the dustbin, and discontent is a natural process, because any movement that is alive, that is in action, must contain those necessary tensions between those who believe you could have better and those who believe we are happy with what we have. If you are able to then blend these two, you will then arrive at the correct balance that enables you to move forward the better each moment.
Some people want you as deputy president. Is that something you would consider?
You know, I'm young
and capable.
And happy to serve the ANC where it has deployed me now. I think that those are questions. I don't respond to faceless people. You know, one time, Minister Mapisa Ngakula told us a story about one comrade somewhere in exile who came saying that, oh no, the people want me. And then they said to him, "Ngumnqilo lowo." Faceless people don't determine the course of direction of the ANC. The branches of the ANC, when they meet in Mangaung, will have the collective wisdom to decide what do they do with their movement. I will be subject to that discipline. I don't think that I will come out of Mangaung as the deputy president of the ANC. No, not at all.
Are there no conspiracies taking place and deals being made in the background at the moment?
There are discussions among branches, among regions, among provinces. The setting up of the ANC leadership is a very interesting, extremely democratic process that, you know, those of us in leadership are often, you know, exempted from, because it's our fate that is being decided. And so we don't get involved. You hear things, some of them excite you, some of them don't. But I would advise any person with high ambitions to rather temper their ambitions. The ANC, when it meets, it's usually very, very wise. It takes the correct decisions.
All right, okay. Now, we're running out of time, so perhaps if you could just give us your closing thoughts. We did invite you to talk, and you know, SOEs are your baby. Perhaps some closing thoughts on that, and also some of the issues that you know that are on people's minds. Maybe just close with your thoughts with us.
The important message I want to leave is that we have firm and decisive leadership in this country. We've seen that leadership demonstrated in how the HIV and AIDS policies were changed without dilly-dallying, without equivocation. Decisive action, new policy, expanded prevention and treatment, helped pregnant women to obtain treatment and care early on during their pregnancies. We've seen decisive leadership in providing the National Development Plan. South Africa has a socio-economic roadmap into the future. 30 years from today, we know what South Africa needs to look like, and we therefore have to put in the building blocks in that direction. We've seen decisive leadership in coming up with the new growth path, the infrastructure development plan. And so South Africa is in good hands, and I hope that we continue with that type of leadership.
All right, and on that note, that's where we're going to have to leave it, unfortunately. But thank you very much indeed, as always, to have a conversation with you. Minister of Public Enterprises, Melissa Gigaba, joining us. And that's it from us.